So that is the difference between the reports and the certificates, right? And those were the fundamental standards. So we are not seeing lot of questions. Now standards here onwards, we'll be seeing a lot of questions. Okay, so now coming to the next standard, that is SA 240, which is on the auditor's responsibilities relating to fraud in an audit of financial statements. Yes, the auditor's responsibilities relating to fraud in an audit of financial statements. Right, so as I told you yesterday, the entire standard is an ATF. है ना? SA 240, the entire standard is an ATF. Yes, the auditor's responsibilities relating to fraud. Right, so with all thanks to Mr. Ramalinga Raju, for giving us such a classic example of fraud. A long time back, 7th of January 2009, this was the confession letter which he had sent to the board of directors of Satyam. To the board of directors, Satyam Computer Services Limited, from B. Ramalinga Raju, chairman. Dear board members, it is with deep regret and tremendous burden that I am carrying on my conscience that I would like to bring the following facts to your notice. The balance sheet carries as of September 30, 2008, inflated, non-existent cash and bank balance of rupees 5,040 crore as against rupees 5,361 crore reflected in the books. Well, actual cash with the company was only 321 crore. And how much cash did they show in the books? 5,361 crore. And he gave 5,040 crore. You understand? This was the amount of bogus cash which was shown in the books. Good, he is not there. He was not there on 9 November 2016. You understand? Otherwise, where he would have booked? That time at least that note was valid. Okay. Right? So, non-existent. है ना, कैश बैलेंस, देन ऑब्वियसली इतना कैश दिखाया तो उसका उतना इंटरेस्ट दिखाना पड़ेगा. Accrued interest of 376 crore which is non-existent. Understated liability of 1230 crore on account of funds arranged by me, यानी कि उतना कंपनी का प्रॉफिट ज्यादा दिखाया. And an overstated debtors position of 490 crore. And actually कितना debtor था कंपनी का? 2,651 rupees. Rupees. 2651 rupees. And what was the debtor shown in the book? 490 crore. There can't be a better example of window dressing than this. To show a better financial position than what actually is. What were their results for the quarter? Actual results, 3% of revenue. How much did they declare on the stock market? 24% of revenue. This has resulted in artificial cash and bank balances going up by 588 crore in Q2 alone. So in 3 months itself, 588 crore bogus cash raised in the books. Right? And the rest is all history. Right? Yes, so but then that's a classic example, of fraud which has been given. Okay, the classic example, it's like a case study it has become now. Okay, right. Yes, books have been written on the fraud committed. Right. So, SA 240, the auditor's responsibilities relating to fraud in an audit of financial statements. Okay, right. Yes, I hope everybody knows the Central Shopping Mall. Central? Okay. Can you name a few brands which are available at Central? Levi's, Global Desi, Puma, Arrow, W, Blackberry. Yes, so many, hai na? Okay, it is so many brands are available. 150, 500 brands available under one roof, hai na? You have Spiker and Levi's and all those brands. Okay, so in Central, yes, can I get Levi's collection? In Central, will I get Levi's collection? Yes. And if I go, say, on JM Road or, in Camp in Pune, there will I find an exclusive Levi's showroom? You understand? So in Central also I got Levi's, and if I go to a mall in any other shop, say I go to Camp, then I find an exclusive Levi's showroom also over there. Now in Central, I'm looking out for Levi's, then all of a sudden I may look out for Spiker. All of a sudden I may go for USPA. You can go in for different brands over there. But once I'm into a Levi's showroom, okay, can I say, okay, no, now I don't want Levi's, show me something, another brand? That option is not there. Similarly, this SA 315, 330, 450 which we studied were like the central standards. Okay, in this standard, we are talking about all sorts of misstatement, whatever be the reason for the misstatement. Whether it is due to fraud, whether it is due to error, whether due to related party, whether due to estimate, whether due to subsequent events, whether due to going concern, whether due to non-compliance with law regulation, all the misstatements. I'm talking about wholesale in SA 315, 330, 450. However, there are some showroom standards. Like, SA 240 is the first example of a showroom standard. Because the only thing which I am discussing in SA 240 is fraud. Nothing else other than fraud is being discussed in 240. So understand? See, look at the objectives of SA 240. It will be clear to you what I am trying to tell you. To identify and assess the risk of material misstatement in the financial statements. If I read till here, it reminds me of 315. है क्या नहीं? To identify and assess the RMM in the financial statements. But that due to fraud gets it to SA 240. To obtain a sufficient appropriate audit evidence about the assessed RMM, say I don't read due to fraud, through designing and implementing appropriate responses. So 330. And to respond appropriately to identified misstatement, if I say, then 450. But here what is said? Identified or suspected fraud. So can I say I am discussing 315, 330, 450 for fraud in 240? 315, 330, 450, but for fraud in 240. So in the exams you have to be careful. One, and now first thing which you have to be careful, first speed breaker, is the question regarding risk or is the question regarding response? Are they telling me that auditor identify the risk, perform the risk assessment procedures, or are they telling you auditor we've already assessed the risk, you only feed gulab jamuns? So are they telling you to respond? And second, have they given due to what? If nothing is given, then 315, 330, 450. You understand now? Abhi we had seen one question, no? You understand, in 330 ke baad mein, we had seen one question. Okay, see over here. While commencing, you read this question first on your own. While commencing the statutory audit of ABC Company Limited, what should be the considerations of the auditor to assess RMM and his responses to such risk due to estimates? Or if I write assess RMM due to estimates. So obviously what will happen now? Instead of the answer coming in 315, 330, where will my answer be from? SA 540, because 540 is relating to accounting estimates. And now, so first thing in the question you need to check is the question regarding risk or is the question regarding response. Like say in the exam there is a question, as an auditor, how will you assess or identify the risk of material misstatement? So what answer are you going to write? Pay attention. As an auditor, how will you identify the RMM due to fraud or error in the financial statements? So what answer you will write? SA 315, because RIAOR. Same question if I change just one word. As an auditor, how will you minimize the risk of material misstatement? As an auditor, how will you identify the RMM? 315. As an auditor, how will you minimize the risk of material misstatement? SA 330, responses. है ना? You can call it minimize, you can call it reduce, you can call it what you can say respond to the risk. So obviously all these are questions regarding what? 330. Same question if I write due to related parties. As an auditor, how will you identify the RMM due to related parties? Now my question no longer belongs to 315, 330, but now my question is shifted to SA 550. So I know you've understood, है ना? Central or showroom. 315, 330, 450, wholesale. Talking about all misstatements, whatever be the reason. And then we have these showroom standards. And then again, one more time, I'm telling you the reason for the sequence. We have to study 315, 330, 450. Now, without that, how can we go to 240? Do you understand that? Okay, so look at the objective of the essay. What does it say? To identify and assess the RMM due to fraud, then to respond to the RMM due to fraud, and then to respond appropriately to the identified or the suspected fraud. Right. Then after that, now in essay 240, they are first talking about the two types of fraud. In essay 240, now they are first talking about the two types of fraud. What is fraud? Intentional act, na? By one or more individuals among management, employees, TC, WG or third parties involving the use of deception to obtain an unjust or illegal advantage. है ना? Cheating. To obtain an unjust, to deceive somebody, to obtain an unjust or illegal advantage. है ना? This types of fraud is ATF. Very important. What are the two types of fraud that SA 240 is talking about? One, fraudulent financial reporting. Fraudulent financial reporting. And second, misappropriation of assets. Huge standard. The standard is very important and very huge also. है ना? Fraudulent financial reporting and misappropriation of assets. Fraudulent financial reporting, FFR, and MOA, misappropriation of assets. Fraudulent financial reporting could also be called as fraudulent accounting. है ना? Financial reporting मतलब CA final group 1 accounts. तो fraudulent financial reporting means fraudulent accounting, मतलब accounting में fraud कर रहे हैं. अब accounting में fraud कैसे हो सकता है? एक या तो accounting records में fraud create कर दो, है ना? Manipulation, what you say, alteration, falsification of accounting records, है ना? Personal petrol का bill company के account पे लगा दो, है ना? So accounting में fraud हो गया. Then accounting policies में fraud. This example I've already given you, है ना? Cost or NRV, whichever is lower. Cost is 100, NRV is 7, but still they are recording it at 100 rupees. So that is accounting policies में there is a fraud. AS7 construction contract. It says if there is a loss on percentage of construction contract, irrespective of the percentage completion, 100% loss should be immediately recognized. है ना? But company says no, contract is only 20% complete, so we will recognize only 20% loss. Misapplication of accounting principles, है ना? Accounting policies में fraud. Accounting estimates में fraud, है ना? No making proper assumptions in the computation of estimates. Accounting entries में fraud. I told you ना, बैठे बैठे क्या करे, करना है कुछ काम. Recording fictitious, bogus, non-existent, unauthorized journal entries. Why? To manipulate operating results or to achieve other objectives. To manipulate the operating results or to achieve other objectives. Accounting period में fraud. इस साल का रेवेन्यू अगले साल में दिखाया, अगले साल का रेवेन्यू इस साल में दिखाया. Omitting, यानी कि रेवेन्यू कभी भी नहीं दिखाया, या एडवांसिंग, नेक्स्ट ईयर रेवेन्यू शोन इन करंट ईयर, और डीलेइंग, करंट ईयर रेवेन्यू शोन इन द नेक्स्ट ईयर. यू नो कट ऑफ ना, है ना? सेग्रीगेशन ऑफ ट्रांजैक्शंस फ्रॉम वन अकाउंटिंग पीरियड टू अनदर. Right, so what are all these fraudulent financial reporting? Yesterday I had told you one term कि या तो कोई इंफॉर्मेशन झूठी तो नहीं है या तो कोई इंफॉर्मेशन छूटी तो नहीं है. छूटी मतलब क्या? ओमिशन. एंड झूठी मतलब क्या? मिसरिप्रेजेंटेशन, है ना? मिसरिप्रेजेंटेशन और इंटेंशनल ओमिशन ऑफ फाइनेंशियल इंफॉर्मेशन. Right, in your exams it could happen. Question number 7, write short notes on fraudulent financial reporting. Any god on earth you pray, you will not get the answer unless and until you've studied. In the exam hall, you remember all the gods and tell them, please, 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 let me remember the points of FFR. If you've studied, you will remember. That's the only one way that God will listen to your prayers. है ना? फ्रॉड्यूलेंट फाइनेंशियल रिपोर्टिंग यानी कि अकाउंटिंग में फ्रॉड किया, मतलब अकाउंटिंग रिकॉर्ड्स में फ्रॉड, एंट्री में फ्रॉड, पीरियड में फ्रॉड, पॉलिसीज में फ्रॉड. समझता है? डज एवरीबडी अंडरस्टैंड? राइट. सेकेंड वन, मिस एप्रोप्रिएशन ऑफ एसेट्स. कंपनीज एसेट्स स्टार्टिंग विथ फिक्स्ड एसेट्स. हु हैज टेकन अ लोन? डायरेक्टर. Why he's taken a loan? For daughter's wedding. What security is given? Company is building. And a personal loan taken by director and company's property given as a collateral security. Is it not a misappropriation of asset? You understand? Intangibles of the company. Company has been developing a huge amount of what you say, spent a huge amount and they've developed a new product. And what one of the employee of your company did, he sold the information to the competitor. And selling technological data to the competitor. And that is for intangibles, for the intangible assets of the entity. Then money received from debtor, what entry should be passed in the books of account? Bank account debit to debtor's account. Entry passed in the books of account, bad debts written off account debit to debtor's account. You've heard that very famous one over there, teaming and lading fraud. Cash received from one shown as if not received from him, and cash received from the subsequent one shown as if received from the earlier one. You understand? So that is, there could be fraud in debtors. Then after that, inventory of the company being stolen for personal use. You understand? There is a uncle. Okay, this uncle, he is working in the Cadbury ka godown, warehouse. And this uncle, he has 7 children. Every day while going to office, each of the child gives him a list. Today for me get 5 star, for me get perk, and for me, get dairy milk, and then all those temptations and Bonville and all that list. Father takes the list to office. From the godown, removes all the respective chocolates. In the afternoon, finishes eating his lunch. And now the dabba is khali, so puts all these chocolates in that dabba. You understand? Okay, and now he inventory, so he has to give a record. कि अगर इतना स्टॉक कम दिखेगा, so what is written in the entry, he is passed in the books of account, eaten by rats account, abnormal loss account debit. है ना? Who are the rats? Okay, right. So inventory of the company stolen for personal use. You understand? What are all these examples of misappropriation of asset? Asset का examples are तो very simple. एक asset याद करने का, लिखते जाने का. है ना? You need to remember one asset and you need to start writing. है ना? Investments of the company, है ना? In the personal custody or in the name of the finance controller of the company. How can investments of a company be in the name of finance controller? They have to be in the name of the company, no? So what is that? Misappropriation of assets. मालूम है अभी कारों में आया है clause 1 fixed assets जिसमें 3 point है. In that, the third point is Clause 1, fixed assets. In that, the third point, whether title deeds of immovable properties, are they registered in the name of the company? Are they in the company's name? Why? Because it was leading to misappropriation of assets. And title deeds of immovable properties, are they in the company's name? Right. So that is FFR and MOA. Fraudulent financial reporting and misappropriation of asset. ये देखो, intentional misstatement और omission, झूठी या तो छूटी. You understand ना? Intentional misstatement मतलब झूठ बताया, and omission मतलब छूट गया, बताया ही नहीं. Are you getting? है ना? Manipulation, falsification of alteration of accounting records. Misrepresentation or intentional omission, again झूठी छूटी. intentional misapplication of accounting principles, recording fictitious journal entry. बैठे बैठे क्या करें? Particularly close to the end of an accounting period, 31st March. You understand? To manipulate operating results or to achieve other objectives. Inappropriate assumptions and changing judgments used to estimate account balances, यानी कि accounting estimates में fraud. You understand? Omitting, advancing or delaying, ये मैंने आपको बताया था ना अभी. Omitting, यानी कि record ही नहीं किया. Advancing, next year का shown in current year. And delaying, मतलब this year का shown in next year. Omitting, advancing or delaying recognition in the financial statements of events or transactions that have occurred during the reporting period. Right? That is FFR, fraudulent financial reporting. Okay, misappropriation of assets, embezzling receipts, misappropriating collections on account receivable. I said no, your debtors money received, but what you are doing is bad debts written off account debit to debtors account. So money is going into pocket account. Stealing physical assets, I told you inventory of the company, or intellectual property, stealing inventory for personal use, Cadbury chori karke leke gaye, stealing scrap for resale, colluding with a competitor for disclosing technological data, so intangibles of the company. Causing an entity to pay for goods and services not received, kickbacks from vendors, double excess payments being made to the vendors. So that's misappropriation of cash. Using an entity's assets for personal use. I told you now, collateral for a personal loan or a loan to a related party. Company's building being given as a collateral for a personal loan. Right? So what are these? These are the two types of fraud. Yes, FFR and MOA. If anybody asks you what are the two types of fraud, and if you don't know the answer, please don't tell कि आपने class कहाँ किया है. मेरा नाम खराब होगा. You understand? Audit का class किया and you don't even know what are the two types of fraud. It's that very essential. Fraudulent financial reporting and misappropriation of assets. Okay. Next. In SA 240, there is one more term called as fraud risk factors. Before the types that's given, no? FRF. फ्रॉड रिस्क फैक्टर्स है ना, डेफिनेशंस में दिया है ना, फ्रॉड का डेफिनेशन है, उसके नीचे एफआरएफ का डेफिनेशन है क्या नहीं? यू अंडरस्टैंड? फ्रॉड एंड देन यू हैव एफआरएफ, फ्रॉड रिस्क फैक्टर्स. यस, पेज नंबर 1.25, लास्ट वन सेंटेंस है ना, एफआरएफ, फ्रॉड रिस्क फैक्टर्स. व्हाट डज इट मीन? एक्टिव वॉइस कन्वर्ट टू पैसिव वॉइस, फैक्टर्स ड्यू टू विच देयर इज अ रिस्क ऑफ फ्रॉड, है क्या नहीं? Factors due to which there is a risk of fraud. What are those factors? It says all the incentive, pressure or opportunity to commit a fraud. And IPO. So what we say, FRF is equal to IPO. What is IPO? Incentive, pressure, opportunity to commit a fraud. And managerial remuneration is linked to profits. There is an incentive to commit a fraud. You know, the more the profits of the company, the higher my pockets will be filled. The more my pockets will be filled. Pressure. There is a target given to the management that you have to declare a result of 120 crore. Actual profit of the company is only 90 crore. So fill in the blanks. Fraud. है ना, 30 crore, उतना एक under provisioning कर दो, तो हो गया adjust. So there is a pressure to commit a fraud. And opportunity. I told you कि that Cadbury वाले uncle, you understand, he finished his tiffin, he took out all the chocolates, he put it in his tiffin. There are no CCTV cameras in the company. Kya? You understand? Now, there is an opportunity to commit a fraud. Yani ke there has to be some weakness in the control, which will provide an opportunity to commit a fraud. So that is IPO. Events, conditions or situations which either provide an incentive or which put a pressure or which provide an opportunity to commit a fraud. So if there is a fraud risk factor, that means there is a fraud. It's not certain. If there is a fraud risk factor, FRF, that means there is a fraud? No, it only increases the possibility of occurrence of fraud. It's like, if there are clouds in the sky, that means it's raining? No, it's very possible that very soon it will rain. Right? So fraud risk factor does not necessarily mean the existence of a fraud. It only means the increase in the possibility of occurrence of fraud. Right. And now in SE 240, I am going to discuss with you the risk assessment procedures. Oh, have we heard this term before? Risk assessment procedures? Yesterday only, no? SA 315. But now we are in a showroom standard, no? Yes, so risk assessment procedures. Right? Risk assessment procedures. What were the risk assessment procedures of 315? IAOR 315. And now what are the risk assessment procedures of SA 240? IIAFRF. You understand? IIAFRF. What is IIAFRF? Inquiries of management and others within the entity. Inquiries of TCWG. Then analytical procedures and evaluation of fraud risk factors. Yes, SA 240 risk assessment procedures, IIAFRF. So we are using colors only, na, from our compass box. Inquiries, analytical, and then evaluation of fraud risk factors. So inquiries of management, inquiries of TCWG. Well, you are going to have a fraud discussion with the client. And you're going to go to the CEO of the company, and specifically now the context of your discussion is only going to be fraud. The standard mein bataya hai na, inquiries of management regarding fraud. We have to write in the report now, we have conducted our audit in accordance with the standards. The standards mein bataya hai ki you have to make inquiries of management regarding fraud. Okay, so now what inquiry will you make of the management regarding fraud? You're going and sitting in front of the management of Infosys. And you're going talking to the board or the management of the company, the CEO and the CFO of the company. And now you have to make an inquiry with them regarding fraud. So what you will first ask them, have you identified any risk in relation to fraud in your organization? Because obviously their company, they should identify the risk. Where all do you think in your organization there a fraud could take place? To say these are the areas where we've identified a fraud could take place. CRISM mein bhi tha na, our risk assessment. You understand? Then, once you've identified the risk of fraud, not we as an auditor, the management for their company. We are not talking about risk assessment of auditor. We are talking about risk assessment of the management. How did you respond to those risks? Then you think that these employees at the branch level, they've been taking the stock of the company home. This is the risk you've identified. So what controls have you put over there? What response is there? Then, what communication did you have with TCWG regarding fraud in the company during the year? Like, if any fraud the management comes to know, obviously it's their responsibility to communicate to TCWG, the highest level of management. And then say management, you found out some 7 employees who had made a racket. You understand, na? Racket matlab kya? All sab mile hue, collusion among employees. You understand, right from the supplier up to the factory gatekeeper, uske baad the stores manager, uske baad the inventory, the production, all these the racket you found out. Okay, all of these have been purchasing lower quality raw material, but the price is being paid for good quality material, and all of them are getting the share. So this is what you identified during the year. So what action did you take? What strict action was taken against those employees? So what actions were taken against the unethical behavior of the employees during the year? Fraud matlab unethical behavior. So these are the inquiries of the management which we will do regarding fraud. है ना? Okay, what risk have you identified? How did you respond? What did you communicate to TCWG? And what action did you take against the employees? Right. In addition to that, you will also have a discussion with the internal auditors. You understand? Okay. Right. I think you need to look at the first question in the question bank of 240. Oh no, not first one. Then maybe. Ninth one, second last. Now looking at this question, even I think, okay, who knew when I was teaching before November 16 attempt, okay, November 16 this question was going to come. Is it appropriate for question number 1D in your paper? Is it appropriate for the auditor to make inquiries of management regarding management's own assessment of the risk of fraud and the controls in place to prevent and detect it? So inquiries of management regarding fraud, the 4 points which I just told you, that is what you have to write in the answer. You understand? No. So that's again the style of the institute, to ask retail questions. So many points were there, but they asked only this one. The auditor shall make inquiries of management regarding. How did management's assessment of the RMM, management's process for responding to the risk, management's communication with TCWG, and communication with employees for unethical behavior. Yes, inquiries of management. Now see, if employee has done a fraud, then management will go and blow the trumpet in front of TCWG. See these employees, they have done a fraud. And what if they themselves have done a fraud? Then they will not go and tell them, see, we have done a fraud. So that is why we also need to make a direct inquiry of TCWG. Do they have knowledge of any fraud in the organization during the year? And how are they supervising the management process in the organization? How do they supervise the management processes? So do they have knowledge of any fraud, and how are they supervising the management processes? Analytical, I think you already know. Unusual fluctuation. 82%, 3%, 30 lakh, 7 crore. Again, you will assess an RMM due to fraud. And then finally, you also need to do the evaluation of the fraud risk factors. Okay, are there any such events, conditions or situations which provide an incentive, which put a pressure, or which provide an opportunity to commit a fraud? Now, these fraud risk factors have been further divided under two: fraudulent financial reporting and misappropriation of assets. What does this mean? These are the two types of fraud, no? Simple language में what they are saying? कि accounting में fraud होने का risk किन factors के कारण ज़्यादा है, और asset का misappropriate होने का risk कौन से factors के कारण ज़्यादा है? Because these are the only two ways in which fraud can take place in an organization. है ना? तो अकाउंटिंग में फ्रॉड होने के चांसेस कब ज्यादा होंगे? दैट इज फ्रॉड रिस्क फैक्टर्स फॉर फ्रॉड्यूलेंट फाइनेंशियल रिपोर्टिंग. और एसेट के मिसएप्रोप्रिएट होने के चांस कब ज्यादा होंगे? दैट इज फ्रॉड रिस्क फैक्टर्स फॉर मिसएप्रोप्रिएशन ऑफ एसेट्स. Are you getting? Okay, now under fraudulent financial reporting, there are 3 points. One, yes, you're making the chart with me. Management characteristics and influence over the control environment. Influence over the control environment. Then industry conditions. Then operating characteristics and financial stability. Then under misappropriation of assets, one, they talk about the attitudes and rationalizations of the employees. Then the pressures on the employee and the opportunity to commit a fraud. है ना, fraud risk factors, है ना, what is the heading that we are discussing? Fraud risk factors, further divided under the two types of fraud, है ना, ये दो क्या है? These are the two types of fraud. Attitudes and rationalizations. वो बोलते हैं दिस मैनेजमेंट, ये अपने को कोई बोनस इंक्रीमेंट प्रमोशन नथिंग, यहाँ पे कुछ नहीं होगा, अपने को ही अपना देखना पड़ेगा. तो दे स्टार्ट misappropriating the assets of the company. You understand? Then there is a pressure, there is an opportunity to misappropriate, weakness in control, no CCTV cameras in the company, so opportunity to misappropriate assets. Do you understand that? Okay. Again, see, in one exam they had asked a question. Yes, question number, can anybody tell me? Yes, question number 5, Global Limited. You are appointed as an auditor of Global Limited. Explain the risk factors relating to misstatement arising from misappropriation of assets. Half knowledge is dangerous. Students को क्या लगता है? Misappropriation of asset. I know, they start writing the examples. I told you ना, अभी all the examples के सारे assets के point लेने का और एक point you can make. But they are asking you the risk factors arising from misappropriation of assets. So they are asking you the FRF. You understand? They are asking you the FRF. Right. Now, fraudulent financial reporting. First it says होने का chance ज़्यादा है ना? Do you understand the heading? कि fraudulent financial reporting होने का chance कब ज़्यादा है? Asset misappropriate होने का chance कब ज़्यादा है? So one, it says the management characteristics and influence over the control environment. The management is interested only in their personal welfare. They have got nothing to do with the good performance of the company. So obviously in such a company there will be a lot of window dressing. And the attitude of the management, weak control environment in the organization. Obviously if this is the situation, then in such a company fraudulent financial reporting possibility is more. Industry conditions. You understand? Like Kingfisher, there is more possibility of fraud, or Infosys, there is more possibility of fraud. Kingfisher, no? So industry conditions, yani कि rather I would call it as adverse industry conditions. You understand, no? In the exam hall, when do you look here and there? When you know the answer or when you don't know the answer? When you don't know the answer. So that is what now, then you think of looking here, there and everywhere. Understand? Industry conditions, yani कि rather adverse industry conditions. No demand for the company's product, huge amount of competition, change in technology, change in government policy, increase in the price of raw material required for production. So what is that? Industry condition. Rather I will call it as adverse industry condition. Then operating characteristics and financial stability. I will tell you a few points. You have to tell me if you remember anything listening to the points which I am just going to tell you. Hello, operating characteristics and financial stability, I am going to tell you a few points. The company is having a negative net worth. Company is having huge amount of operating losses. It's been years that the company has not declared dividend. The company has no money to repay the bank loan. The company has no money to pay to the suppliers on the due dates. The company's financial ratios are in the adverse. Does it remind you of anything out of what you've studied? Reconstruction, sick company, bankruptcy, okay. Financial indications of going concern, SA 570. है ना, negative net worth, negative working capital, accumulated losses, no money to repay bank loan, no money to pay to creditors, and obviously every reason why you will doubt going concern is every reason why there could be a fraud. Now not applicable for CA or for you good students, but just as an example. Okay, every reason that you may fail is every reason that you may copy. Every reason that you may fail, matlab going concern, is every reason that you may copy, matlab fraud. So, like example, if I say, huge amount of competition. So one, so it will affect your going concern, and second, because of that, there is a possibility of fraud also. Change in government policy. तो एक तो आपका दुकान बंद हो जाएगा, और second, you may do a fraud. You understand, no? So going concern, fraud, they share common reasons. Whatever are the reasons why you may doubt the going concern could also be a reason for fraud. Are you getting what I'm saying? Right, so that is fraudulent financial reporting, right? There is a huge list given in your books in Annexure 1. You understand, no? Annexure 1, fraud risk factors resulting from FFR, fraudulent financial reporting. It says management characteristics and influence over the control environment. And a significant portion of management's compensation is based on bonus stock option. Excessive interest by management in maintaining the stock price. This is what happened with the Ramalinga Raju. He wanted to maintain the share price of the company, and that is why he kept on declaring those higher profits. Aggressive, unrealistic commitments to creditors and third parties. Okay, next year we will declare a profit of 120 crore. Tax motivated reasons. And ineffective, inappropriate communication of ethics and values dominated by a single person. Non-monitoring of significant controls, failure to correct the known material weaknesses, unduly aggressive financial targets and expectations. Like, yesterday I taught you KOC, in that there was one past and future. Objective strategies and related business risks. So right now, if the revenue of the company is 100 crore, and you ask management, okay, what is your objective for the future? So they say by next year, we should be reaching a revenue of 120 crore. So looks okay, no? Right now a revenue of 100 crore. By next year we should reach a revenue of 120 crore. They say, CA, right now our revenue is 100 crore. Whatever happens on earth, by next year end our revenue has to be 5,000 crore. Pakka your company ka satyam hone wala hai. And your aggressive financial targets. And very aggressive financial targets and expectations for operating personnel. Right, these Flipkart employees, expectations for operating personnel. These Flipkart employees, for this Diwali sale they had, Dasera Diwali, they were staying over there only, in the Flipkart office only. For 8-10 days, none of the employees. They said going home at 4 in the morning and coming again at 9. Better we stay here only. So what is that high level of expectations from the operating personnel? So what they may do some fraud in the organization. So putting so much of pressure on them. Disregard for regulatory authorities. Ineffective accounting, information, technology or internal auditing staff. Non-financial management participating excessively in the selection of accounting policy. Aata vata to kuch nahi. You understand? But they are telling, no, you do entry like this. Right, then high turnover of management, strained relationship between management and current or predecessor auditor, history of security law violation, and corporate governance structure is weak or ineffective. So that's bad management in the company. Then industry conditions, I told you high degree of competition, declining industry with increasing business failures, rapid changes in the industry, technology or rapid product obsolescence. Right, then operating characteristics and financial stability. What did I tell you? All the points for financial indications of going concern. Unable to generate cash flows. Pressure to obtain additional capital. Asset liability revenue expense based on estimates. Transactions which are not in the ordinary course of business. Related party transactions are not audited. Unusual or highly complex transactions. Understand? So all operating characteristics and financial stability. All what you say, Swiss and Mauritius and Panama bank accounts. Significant bank accounts or subsidiaries or branch operations in tax haven jurisdictions. So all these Swiss Mauritius bank accounts. Overly complex organizational structure. Difficulty in determining the controlling person controlling the entity. Unusual rapid growth or profitability. High vulnerability of change in interest rates. High dependence on debt. Unrealistically aggressive sales. Threat of imminent bankruptcy. Adverse consequences of pending transactions and deteriorating financial position. So at least you write down over there similar to financial indications of going concern. What you do, point number 3, under that there is some place over there now. So what you'll write down over there, similar to financial indications of going concern. SA 570. Financial indications of going concern, SA 570. Now coming to the second list. What is the second list for? Misappropriation of assets. Incentives or pressures. What does it say? Adverse relationship between the entity and the employees. There is adverse relationship. So obviously the cashier of the company and managing director ka jordar jhagda ho gaya. Now cashier to what? He can entire treasure empty. And he can empty. He said, mere saath jhagda, khali your treasure. You understand? So adverse relationship between the entity and the employees with access to cash or other assets susceptible to theft. Known or anticipated future employee layoffs. They say anyways, I have been given my layoff ka letter. Okay, after 2 months I have to leave. And nowadays company recession, and they say they lay off a few employees. So they say anyway I have to go. So while going at least let me take something for myself. Right. Recent or anticipated changes to employee compensation or benefit. Promotion, compensation or other rewards inconsistent with expectations. So no growth in the company. So again you are antagonized against the company. So again you may misappropriate the asset. This is a very interesting one. The opportunities. You understand? The susceptibility of the assets to misappropriation. That is what they talk over there. I told you that uncle, Cadbury. Okay, now that uncle was working in the Cadbury warehouse, that is why his children were telling him, okay, in the evening get this Cadbury, that Cadbury. Had that same uncle been working in a chemical godown, why would have children told him, okay, get H2O and H2 phosphorus and H2SO4 and any such chemicals for them. So the nature of the asset is only such, it could be misappropriated. So one company, it is dealing in Syntex water tank. You understand? 100 liters, 500 liters, 150 liters, huge ones. Okay, now kitni bhi andheri raat ko, you take it out from the company. It can be seen only na you're taking the water tank. But another company, it is dealing in diamonds. Like those old Amitabh Bachchan, Amrish Puri style movies, there used to be a velvet pouch. And in that, they used to take out a few diamonds and then they used to say, karodo ke diamonds hai. You understand, hai? So, okay, so that in just a small pouch, you have crores of rupees of amount. So obviously the smuggling possibility is higher for that as compared to Syntex water tank. Syntex water tank, even though if you don't lock that particular godown where it is kept, there is no problem. So the nature of the asset. You understand? One company, it is dealing in huge amount of cash. Every day cash collection of 40 lakh, 50 lakh, sometimes even 80, 85 lakh. Another company, zero cash. All transactions only through check or DD or online payment, debit card, credit card. So what risk is there to one company? That risk is only not there to the other company. One company, it is entirely dealing in bearer documents, liquid instruments. And other company, it handles all matters only through account pay checks or draft. So you understand, the nature of the assets has to be such which increases the susceptibility of the asset to misappropriation. Like I told you, inventory items are small in size but high value, like diamonds. And fixed assets which are small in size, marketable or lacking observable identification or ownership. Like, company's car, every day you're taking it home. Right. Then inadequate internal control over assets may increase the susceptibility. So no CCTV cameras in your company. And again, inadequate segregation of duties. Why was the teaming and leading fraud taking place? Because the person who was receiving the money, the person who was passing the entry into the book, the person who was depositing the money into the bank account were one and the same. There was no segregation of duties. There was no division of work. You understand? So that is the second one. The opportunities to commit a fraud. And the last one, the attitudes. Disregard for the need for monitoring or reducing risks. So not following the controls in the organization. Disregard for internal controls or misappropriation of assets. So again, no monitoring, no controls being followed. Behavior indicating displeasure or dissatisfaction with the entity or its treatment of the employee. You understand? So behavior indicating displeasure or dissatisfaction. So again, antagonized. And changes in behavior or lifestyle. You are the auditor of the company. So obviously you have the access to the entire muster of the company. The payroll muster. All you know the salary of each and every employee. Okay. So now you know, this accounts fellow, his salary per month is 23,000 rupees. But you see, ekdam top to toe he is branded. You understand? iPhone 7 yesterday launched, today it is in his hand. You understand? He comes in Jaguar in office. So now you say 23,000 salary, how he manages? Installment bhi nahi hoga. So changes in behavior or lifestyle. Lifestyle, 23,000 rupees salary, how do you manage this lifestyle? He says, pakka there is a fraud. He is misappropriating the assets of the entity. So misappropriation of assets. Right, so those are the fraud risk factors. These are the risk assessment procedures only. Now we will discuss the responses. IIAFRF. है क्या नहीं? IIAFRF. Inquiries of management and others within the entity, inquiries of TCWG, analytical procedures and evaluation of fraud risk factors. Right, so why are you performing these risk assessment procedures of SA 240? To assess the RMM, very good, due to fraud. So, okay, in 315 I had told you, okay, if the risk is a risk due to fraud, exactly, then it is a bowl of gulab jamun, no, significant risk. And a VVIP treatment, Z security in the audit. And SA 240 says, because it is due to fraud and it is an SR, SA 240 says whatever RMM you assess in SA 240, they should be called as fraud risk. What does 240 say? Whatever RMM you assess in SA 240, they shall be called as fraud risk. And there are two presumed fraud risks in SA 240. One, a risk of over recognition of revenue. It says this is the chief guest in every audit. You understand? Evaluating and see over there. Presumption that there are risk of fraud in revenue recognition. Matlab, this is a chief guest in every audit. Pakka. Presumed fraud risk of SA 240. It says you don't apply your mind, you don't do your risk assessment procedures. Revenue recognition has to be given a bowl of gulab jamuns. Presumption that there are risks of fraud in revenue recognition. Do you get that? Presumption of fraud. And now you have to respond to the assessed fraud risk. Now we've assessed, now what we have assessed in SA 240? the fraud risk. Now we need to respond to this fraud risk. Right? Tell me, how do I respond? I think in Jio Limited there is a fraud. That's fraud risk, no? So as an auditor, now what should be my response? Be more alert. More of an attitude of professional skepticism. Very good. Be more cautious in the audit. Second, more experienced staff. Very good. You're borrowing points from SA? 330. More. You understand? So more alert in the audit. More of an attitude of professional skepticism. Emphasizing the members of the engagement team to be more alert. More experienced staff, having specialized skill and knowledge to be put on the assignment. What is the first type of fraud which we talked of in 240? FFR. गड़बड़ नहीं करने का, एक FFR है और एक FRF है. What is FFR? Fraudulent financial reporting. What is FRF? Fraud risk factors. Okay, right. So now fraudulent financial reporting means fraudulent accounting. So accounting में fraud. You understand? मतलब accounting policies, records में fraud. So as an auditor, you will do more evaluation of accounting principles and practices. More evaluation. You'll see their selection, application of accounting policies more in depth. And the last response of the auditor is more sensitivity. More sensitivity to the possibility of management override. Yes, management override of control. So this is another very important technical term of SA 240 MOC, management override of controls. Management override of controls. Right, so now we'll have a separate discussion on MOC. So what were these? These were the responses to the assessed fraud risk. Now out of that I'm picking up the fourth point, which is regarding the more sensitivity to the possibility of management override of controls. Right, design, implementation and maintenance of internal controls in the organization. Whose responsibility? Management's responsibility. Okay, these are the controls. So any purchase to be recorded in the organization, these are the steps that it should go through. And now what is ensured, or what does the management ensure? That all the employees in the company, while passing any purchase ka entry, are following these controls in the organization. But what they are doing? They want to pay their ghar ka electricity bill, property bill and all that. That time they are overriding the system. They are passing direct journal entries into the system. So they are ensuring that everybody else follows the control. But what they are doing? They themselves are not following the control. Say traffic policeman at the city signal, at any signal. Okay, what is his role? He has to ensure that all the citizens follow the traffic rule. Okay, nobody breaks the signal, everybody is standing behind the zebra crossing and so. And now if he himself breaks the signal, then that's an example of MOC, management override of control. You have to ensure that nobody breaks the signal and you are only breaking the signal. You understand? Tirupati Balaji, if you have to get a darshan over there, so then you have to stand in the queue. Sometimes 10 hours, 12 hours or so. Okay, so normal, what is the procedure? If you have to get the darshan, some pass vagare, but there is a system which you have to follow. So 10, 12 hours you stand in the queue and then you get the darshan. And say Amitabh Bachchan goes over there. 2 minutes and directly in front of the God. So what is that? Management override of control. Right, so again, एक मैंने आपको presumed fraud risk कौन सा बताया 240 में? Revenue recognition. And the second presumed fraud risk of SA 240 is MOC. तो ये दो तो chief guest ही है. Presumed fraud risk. It says in some entity it may be more, in some entities it may be less. It may vary from entity to entity, but nevertheless it will be present in all entities. Do you understand now what I say? It may vary from entity to entity, but nevertheless it will be present in all entities. So now, as an auditor, to mitigate the risk of MOC, what testing is done by the auditor? JV testing. What testing is done by the auditor to mitigate the risk of MOC? JV testing. JV testing, journal entry. Rather, here you should be remembering the substantive procedures ke 4 prakar. Test of detail, vouching verification. Substantive analytical procedures, ratios and trends. Agreeing the financial statements to the underlying records and examining material journal entries. Okay, this is there to mitigate the risk of MOC. Already incorporated in substantive procedures. Are you getting? Journal entries. So what you will do? First, you will make inquiries of management. Management, please give us a list of all the entries which have been passed in the system during the year by JV. Please give us a list of all those entries. Then after that, you will make inquiries of those individuals who have actually passed those entries into the system. So management says these are the 20 entries which are passed at the end of every reporting period, and this fellow A passes those entries. So I'll go to that fellow A. Then I will test check journal entries at the end of the reporting period as well as throughout the period. Because maximum journal entry कब pass होगा? जब accounts close करना होगा. And sometimes, interim dividend, amalgamation वगैरह का entry may come in between the year also. And obviously, when I'm checking a journal entry, so and so account debit to so and so account credit, तो वो entry का amount भी तो होगा ही ना. Entry can't be there without an amount, no. So generally, when I check an entry, I also check the amount, and here the amount will be an estimate. Like all the provisions are estimates. And there, when I'm checking an estimate, I need to check, is there any management bias in accordance with SA 540. Management bias, more I'll discuss in 540. You understand? So this is a separate discussion regarding the MOC. Hannah, what does it say? It's a presumed fraud risk. It may vary from entity to entity, but nevertheless present in all audits. Then as an auditor, we'll make inquiries of the management, inquiries of those individuals. Right? Then test check the journal entries at the end of the period as well as throughout the period. And also check the amounts. And the amounts will be estimates. And so management bias. And so SA 540. So what have I discussed with you so far? The risk assessment procedures, IIAFRF. And then the responses of 240. What were the responses of 240? More professional skepticism, more experienced staff, more evaluation of accounting principles and practices, and more sensitivity to the possibility of management override of controls. So what are the two presumed fraud risks of SA 240? MOC and revenue recognition, right? We'll continue after the break.